patients. They also run drives just like this one. And I am also the creator of a website called cheekswab.org. And I launched that website in January of this year. And the goal of CheekSwab is to better educate and engage minority communities about the need for bone marrow donors. So today I'm going to talk briefly about a couple things. I'm going to share a little bit about myself. I'm going to talk about Janet Liang, who I think most of you are familiar with now. I think you guys saw her video this past Sunday. And then I'm going to share why I think joining the bone marrow registry is important. In December 2006, I was diagnosed with acute myelogenous leukemia, and that's a cancer of the blood. I was 20 years old. I was a junior in college at the time, and I spent Christmas and New Year's and my 21st birthday in the hospital undergoing chemotherapy. And I was declared in remission in 2007, and so I've been in remission for almost 5 years now. There's been a lot. I've thought about a lot since that day that I was diagnosed. Until that day, I'd never spent even a night in the hospital before. I had never broken a bone. I was healthy. I was active. And the thing is, when you're 20 years old, the world is sort of like at your fingertips. You think you're invincible. And I thought I was invincible, and then I realized very suddenly that I wasn't, because I was diagnosed with cancer. And, cancer was a wake-up call for me in a lot of ways, not just physically, but also emotionally, and also mentally, and also spiritually. It was a really big challenge. And I think when you're 20, you sort of take your life for granted and your health for granted. And I think when you're 25, you take your life for granted. And I think when you're 30 and 40 and 50, you take your life for granted. For me, it was never if I graduate college, or if I get married, or if I hold my first child. It was when I do these things. And then, so when it started to become real that these things may never happen, it was very hard for me to deal with and come to terms with that. And I think, very rarely do we ever come to terms, especially at a young age, do we ever come to terms with the fact that, one day we may die. And that's a very real reality, but it's something that we ignore and we put off. But here's the thing that happens when you accept the fact that one day you will die. I think you're set free in ways that you probably never imagined you would be. And I know that sounds kind of backwards, and I know that sounds like it doesn't make sense. But when people would come to visit me in the hospital, and I would see them walk through the door, or I would see them leave the door, I would think to myself, is this the last time I'm going to see this person? Is this the last time I'm ever going to talk to this person? And when you have that thought whenever you talk to someone, it really changes what you're going to say to them. Because you stop caring about, arguing and bitterness and anger and stuff like that. And all you want to do when you talk to that person is share with them how much they mean to you and like what impact they've had with you. And at that time, my death was very, very real. Like, I could have died a day later, I could have died a week later. So, ironically, in the midst of the chaos, of cancer and chemotherapy and being sick, life became really simple. Love as much as you can. Appreciate all that you have, and try to spend as much time, whatever time you have left, to, build up rather than destroy. And when you think about it, I think this is kind of the essence of the Christian experience, what it means to be Christian. Because confronting the fact that one day you will die, and thinking about how that impacts how you live today, is basically what we're called to do as Christians. Realizing that no matter what we do for security, no matter how we build our lives up, no matter what we plan, our lives are not our own. We're not in control, that we were saved through faith and not by anything we could have done. And the same faith, I think, that freed me from that bitterness and anger when I talk to some people, it's the same faith that frees us. Sometimes we forget about that, but it frees us right now to do the same thing. And I think that's the gospel. I think that, Jesus bore the pain and suffering of sin so that we could be free. And if, the Bible says, if the birds of the air don't worry, and yet God provides for them, then why do we? The last thing I want to do here is appeal to anyone's sense of guilt. Guilt does not breed conviction. Guilt breeds resentment. You know, if you join the registry, you have to be willing to donate to anyone. If you join the registry, you have to be willing to go through with the process all the way, even if it's uncomfortable. And 1.1% of the entire registry is Chinese. And so if they, by some miracle, find a match for Janet in that 1.1% of people, the reality is only 44% of the time will that person be willing to donate. And so the commitment is very important, because it's a miracle in the first place to find someone in that 1.1%. And then when you find them, you have to be willing to donate. And guilt will not make you donate. Guilt will not see you through these decisions. Conviction will see you through these decisions. If you believe it's important, it'll see you through these decisions. Even when it gets uncomfortable, even if you're taking all this time off, you know, to go to a doctor's appointment or whatever, you know, conviction will urge you to tell your friends about this, and conviction will save people's lives. You know, many of you have seen Janet's video, and, you know, I don't have to tell you, it's a very, very sad video. And, you know, while I had moments of being sad when I was sick and when I was in the hospital, I don't really think I have anything that compares to Janet and her video. You know, my circumstances were never as serious as hers were. They could have gotten there, but they never did. And she needs a Chinese donor, and she needs one in 40 days. And she basically needs one this month, because they have to process the kits in order to get them to her by April. And if she doesn't find it, she'll die. And there's been a huge push, you know, throughout the country to get her a donor. And she needs a donor so much that when you think about this video, you know, she's sitting in the hospital, and she's bald, and she's crying, and she's sick, and she's frail. And when I was in the hospital, I didn't even want any pictures taken of me. And she's in the hospital shooting a video and putting it up on the internet. And so many people have seen that video. It went crazy on social media. Like CNN picked up the video. People around the world, potentially millions of people, have seen her at her most vulnerable moment. And the reason for that is because she's that desperate. Nobody wants to be a public spectacle. But when you have no other choice but to rely on the goodness of other people to survive, then you do what you can. You know, that video is not an appeal to your guilt. It's an appeal to your humanity. Because reality is, Janet is you, and Janet is me, and Janet is your son and your daughter, and your brother and your sister and your parents and your best friend. And if you can imagine what it's like to have the person you love most in the world be sick, and to have to rely on other people to help them, and it doesn't matter how much money you make, it doesn't matter what you've done with your career, then you can empathize with Janet and what it's like to need a donor. You know, cancer, I think, is so devastating because it's unexpected. You know, when I was diagnosed, I had no family history of leukemia. I was healthy. I didn't smoke. I didn't drink. I didn't do drugs. I was a good Christian. I tried to live my life as a good person. And it happened to me. And it didn't make sense to me. And to some degree, it still doesn't. But it's the lottery. It's like winning the lottery. And for some reason, in the lottery of life, some people win and some people lose. But so if cancer is the lottery of death, I think the bone marrow registry is the lottery of life. Because realistically, your chances are 1 in every 540 people get called to donate. And so that is 0.18% of people get called to donate. So chances are, even if you register today, you will go through the rest of your life. You will probably not remember anything I said. And everything that will go on for the rest of your life will just be as regularly scheduled as it would have been had I not come here today. But I think because the chances are so small, if you get that opportunity, I think that's an act of God. And I think that it's a blessing and not a burden to be able to give your life to someone in that manner. And I think you'll remember it for the rest of your life. Greater love has no one than this, that one lay down his life for his friends. John 15:13. That that verse, you know, it resonates more with me now than it ever did before. So I thank you for the opportunity to speak today. We're running a drive at, I think it starts around 10 o'clock after the Abundant Life service. I have like 9 volunteers coming. We're going to have stations set up. Hopefully we'll have it running pretty efficiently so you don't have to stick around too long. I can answer any questions you have at 10 o'clock. I have a lot of promotional material also that you can look at. We have the swabs here. We can get everyone registered here. And I look forward to getting it started at 10 o'clock. Thanks for listening.